Hello. Hey, it works. Thank you guys for coming out early. I know there was some parties last night, and you made it here. Congratulations. I'm Greg Pollock. This is Carlos Souza, and you're listening to Ruby 5. No, not really. Thought I'd put that out there for those of you who listen. So we're doing the Ruby Hero Awards. In case you're not familiar, the Ruby Hero Awards are put together to give some people some recognition that they deserve, that they don't otherwise get. We're in our 7th year, started in 2008, so that was like the third RailsConf we started doing the Ruby Hero Awards. 2013 Ruby Heroes, in case you're not familiar. You might see some recognized names there. Here was to the 2012 Ruby Heroes. And then if you go back in time, the really interesting thing about this is that a lot of these people are well known now. But at the time of doing the awards, they weren't. They were just hacking away. You know, some of them made it onto the Rails core team. Some of them made great impacts, I feel like, on my life, on other people's life, probably on this room. But before they were so well known, they just worked really hard, and then we recognized them on stage here with Ruby Hero Awards. Oh, and a lot of these people, I realized last night, these are the people, if Ruby's down here, a lot of these people are the ones that, created floors up, on these Ruby Heroes, and then maybe your software comes up here, right? To bring it back to Yehuda's talk. Now, a lot of them are educators as well. They're not just coders. So why do we do this? Well, just to briefly give you the background, we do this podcast called Ruby 5, twice weekly Ruby News podcast. It's also a newsletter. You can subscribe now if you don't listen to things. And what we realize when we feature people doing new libraries for Ruby and Rails on a weekly basis is that there's certain people that go above and beyond. There's certain people that are producing library after library or educational product after educational video that don't get the recognition they deserve. So we realized, well, maybe what we should do is give them an award ceremony so that we can get some of these people that work hard for our benefit up on stage to give them the round of applause that they deserve. So this year we had 631 nominations. In case you're not familiar, so what we do is we have that website I had a second ago. People can submit their nominations, and then we go, so it's not a popularity contest, we go back to the Ruby Heroes of previous years and ask them to take under consideration the nominations, and they together vote for who gets these 6 awards you see up here on stage. So there's 6 Ruby Hero Awards we got to give away today, and with any luck, all of them should be here today. So, the other thing that I thought was interesting, as I was going through and collecting information about all these different people, I thought I would go ahead and give it away what 4 of them are. Are you ready? There's 4 of them. But I thought this was pretty impressive. So 4 of these guys are amazing. Well, really all of them are amazing open source contributors. I also, so a couple people I have to thank, of course, before we get to it. I got to thank Ruby Central for letting us come up here on stage and give these awards away and support us. Also got to thank everybody who voted. Was there anybody here who voted for the Ruby Heroes nominated people? You're awesome. Thank you. Also got a thanks to Code School. They pay the bills. They paid for these awards. In case you're not familiar, we've got a booth down there, and we've got 3 courses that we put out that Carlos had a lot to do with. He's the author of these Rails 4 courses. If you need to get up to speed, check him out. Come down to our booth later. Also, thanks to everybody who voted. And before we get onto it, I want to make sure the best way that we can keep this community strong and the best way that you can motivate people individually to keep on being awesome is through positive reinforcement, through a compliment. So I challenge you guys, if you see somebody at this conference, it could be somebody who gives a conference talk, somebody who created some open source library that you use, and you see them here, please, please take a moment to set them aside and say, I really appreciate you did that library. It really helped me. A little of that positive reinforcement can go a long way, especially when you're, working by yourself in a room, coding away, and you don't really know, you don't really get to be in front of people that you impact on a daily basis. All right. So if you hear your name called today, you're going to want to come up on stage. We've got awards here. And we're going to stand over here till everybody's called. Then you got to do the traditional group picture. And then we've got boxes for the awards if you're a Ruby hero. So I'm going to hand it over to Carlos here to announce the first Ruby hero.
The first Ruby hero looks like this on GitHub. And you might know this hero through their contribution to education through the Ruby Rogues podcast every week. And also, she's a pretty active conference speaker. She helped teach at G School. And she also put out this awesome project called exorcism.io that helps people practice coding, practice testing, TDD. Here's what some people had to say about her. She inspired me to get into open source projects for the first time and devotes so much of her time to teaching others how to write clean, beautiful code. The hero I'm speaking of is Katrina Owen.
Awesome. Let's move on to hero number 2. It looks something like this on GitHub. Now, this guy has actually been nominated several years in a row for Ruby Heroes. And so just over the years, he's given back a lot to the Ruby community. If you've been in the Ruby community for a couple years, you know his name by now, hopefully, from some of the conference talks that he's given and some of the really meaningful work that he's done. One of the things that I most admire about him is his work helping kids learn Ruby through something called Kids Ruby. He's also done this sort of initiative through events like Kids Code Camp. And also, recently, over the last year or two, he's put a tremendous amount of work into a Ruby library called R2, which allows you to use Ruby to program all sorts of robots. Here's a quote that somebody said about him. He is a champion for Ruby, using it to teach programming to children through Kids Ruby and also providing awesome robotics framework, R2. In case you're not familiar with all those clues, the person I'm talking about here is Ron Evans.
Hero number 3. This is what they look like on GitHub. He's also a contributor and helps maintain the Boxen project, which helps you provision your local development environment, gets you up and running pretty quick. He also is the maintainer for the Simple Form gem, which I'm sure a lot of you use. He is a member of the Rails core team, and he's up there with the top contributors, top 5 contributors. And here's what some people had to say about him. He has done amazing contributions to Rails, Devise, Simple Form, and other open source projects, dedicating lots of hours of his extra time to improve our lives. I don't know if people understand how important he is to Rails. He's basically a second Tenderlove. Person I'm speaking of is Rafael Mendonça França.
All right. Hero number 4. I think he's got the most commits. I mean, look at that. It's solid. You probably know him. He's the main maintainer right now of the Twitter Ruby gem. He also helps maintain and create the Twitter client, command line client. Also, Rails admin. If you're familiar with Rails admin, this is the guy who created it and helps maintain it now. And now, as I was going through and doing my research with these heroes, I would occasionally go back to the very first commit to see if did they start this library? And with Rails admin, I found something really interesting. So I went back to the first commit. I was like, Rails admin, where'd the inspiration for this come from? And all you had to do is look at the last couple commits. That's the second, third, and fourth commit. What was even more interesting is you would scroll up with some more commits, and I found something else there too. It's kind of interesting. And then I scrolled up even more, and I found PHP my admin. No, I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that be funny? Anyways, so this person also is a huge contributor to a bunch of open source projects that we all use on a daily basis, things like Bundler, Ruby Gems, and Thor, amongst other projects. Here's a quick quote. He contributes more to open source than anyone I know, and he's willing to do the grunt work. It's not always glamorous, but he's in the trenches. Christmas, birthday, every day. The person that we're talking about here, of course, is Eric Michaels Ober.
Hero number 5. Here's them on GitHub. He's a contributor and the maintainer for the Purgan library, which is a Ruby Minecraft plugin. And he's also been co-leading the JRuby project for a long time. So he's been helping spread the Rubies on the JVM. Here's some quotes of what people had to say about this hero. He's heroic because he's the number 2 contributor to JRuby, and I don't think many people know who he is. He solves difficult problems and always has time to help people out. The hero we're talking about here is Thomas Inibo.
All right, one more to go. This person has created more gems than probably just about everybody in this room, about 150 gems over the last many, many years. He's been in the Ruby community for a very long time. Just to highlight a couple of the gems that he's worked on more recently, you've got the map gem, you've got the DAO gem, you've got the main gem, you've got the open4 gem, you've got the system U gem, you've got the main gem. You guys get the pattern here. He's done a lot. Now, I found this one primarily interesting, the Testy library. It's a BDD testing framework for Ruby that's mad at the world and plans to kick its ass in 78 freaking lines of code by ruthlessly removing lines of testing framework. I added the animated GIFs. It wasn't in there. But I thought it was a really interesting point because there's certainly a lot of, we don't need that many lines of testing framework to be really effective. I thought that was a great statement to make. Here's some quotes. He has easily been the biggest influence on my Ruby style. While everyone else was cargo culting the style of Rails code, he was doing his own thing in his own unique way. He's a relatively undiscovered treasure chest in the Ruby community. The work he did with Ruby to mash the satellite together is top-notch, and the body of work out there in GitHub is impressive to say the least. The person I'm talking about here, of course, in case you don't know, is Ara T. Howard. All right. Why don't you guys come up to the front? So, to finally announce, these are the 2014 Ruby Hero Awards. Ruby Heroes.